is the Page Publishing Book Club. How you doing, Rob Barrett's my engineer? How you doing out there? I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini, and we begin with a woman who knows dirt. Stay with me now. Allison Pocat is a landscape architect. She knows a lot about dirt and stormwater and how chemicals we put in the soil affect us. And only someone like Allison could write Adam's Land, a children's book for all ages that explains some very important information in a very simple but entertaining way. Allison.
It's actually a three-part book.
Okay.
It starts out with the first part being how soil is created, and it does that by taking a boy who is able to shrink using a special bubble and getting him down and dirty into the soil. So he goes down and he meets a fungi because he floats, he's in this bubble, and then he's brought back down by a bee, and he ends up meeting a wood roach who's digging out wood in a log in order to feed his young, and ends up going down into the soil. He makes friends with a cricket, and he finds an ant and a worm, and there's a bunch of aspects of how soil is actually created, the breakdown of organic matter in the soil, that are actually being explained through these various characters that he encounters as he's traveling through the soil and trying to get back to being a normal-sized person again. And then he finally does come out, and he wants to go back and visit the characters that he's already met that were in the soil. And he goes back into the bubble and gets small again, only this time his friend the cricket jumps into the bubble kind of by accident, and they end up floating in the air and ending up in the top of a snag. And there's a whole different environment in an old dead tree than there is in the soil. And so he floats down, works his way down this tree, and comes out the bottom of the tree, and he's met an owl, and he's met mice, and he's met all the various creatures, including befriending a squirrel who is at one point laying on a branch on the tree, on what's left of the tree. But it gives him a real good idea of what's actually living in a tree, because most people see a snag as just this dead, wasted piece of nothing. And so he's had a chance to see more than that. And he and his cricket are still in the bubble, and they pop out of the bottom of the snag and get picked up by wind in a storm that's getting ready to come. They'd kind of been forewarned. They'd met a tree frog, and the tree frog said, it's going to rain. So they end up being picked up by wind and blown downhill, and he ends up floating as the storm hits through a rush of rainwater, and he gets to experience what happens when you're caught in stormwater, and where does it go, and the things that you need to worry about that are in the stormwater. So even though it's all fiction and it's this fun little adventure of this kid that's, going to various places in his backyard, the person reading it gets a lot of information about soil production, about life in a snag, about stormwater and things to be concerned with in terms of stormwater, like pollutants and soil sediments and what might be actually in that water and how it rushes down, and the various creatures that are down in various areas, wetland areas of any kind of a site. I'm not sure if I'm actually answering your question.
You are so answering my question. And,
okay.
And the whole time you're talking, my brain is going, I live on an island, and everything goes into the bay. That includes the pesticides you use on your lawn and the oil that drips from your car. And, people, I think, just don't want to realize. I don't know if they don't know or they don't want to know how we're all connected and how everything we do affects our environment. So
I am kind of an environmentalist.
Well, I mean, you felt the need to write this book.
Yeah, when my son is now 21, but when he was in third grade, his teacher approached me and said, I understand you're a landscape architect, and I think you might know something about soils. And he said, well, in the North Carolina curriculum in third grade, the kids study soils. And she said, it is awful. Kids hate it. The book we have is boring. The lesson plans that go with it are boring. Nobody learns anything. Would you be willing to teach this unit? Wow. So I went in there once a week for a number of weeks and taught the unit. And she was right. It was not only was it a really boring lesson plan, but most of it was incorrect. And so it sort of got me into this mode of how can we make this more interesting? Soils are very dynamic. There's a lot going on. It can be very interesting. Secondly, how do we get, information into these kids in a way that they will actually remember it? And so I wrote Adam's Bubble just to see if what I was thinking would work. That test book became the first part of this book. And so that's where that kind of came from. If we don't teach our kids, we're going to lose what we got. We're already losing what we got. I'm just terrified when I see things like the massive hurricanes that have swept through in the last month. Buoy temperatures out in the middle of the Atlantic sitting at 93 degrees. That's unbelievably hot. We can't keep doing what we're doing. Obviously, it isn't going to work. None of us will be alive for long.
All right, Allison. You know what I can't believe is after all that, the book was not accepted as part of the curriculum at her school district. So she's hoping her book will be a way to educate all of us. There can't be too many stories about America's VA hospitals because there's so much wrong and so much that needs to be done to improve them. And it is the subject of P.J. Dodge's book. It's called simply Why?
The quick synopsis is 15 veterans of various wars band together, realize they have a common issue, and as veterans would be wont to do, decide they have a resolution and go forth with their resolution with somewhat disastrous endings.
What's their common thread?
The Veterans Administration and the way they treat the people.
Oh, boy.
We're opening a can of worms. Yes, ma'am. Husband and father. Father, many years ago, had to fight to get benefits. He was hit on the head with cold rock, dead for 8 minutes, and nobody wanted to give him anything but a partial retirement. So fought that with my mother. My husband was Vietnam. He came back, was not wounded per se, but PTSD, and eventually Agent Orange caught him. We were provided with VA benefits. They pulled the VA benefits. It took 4.5 years to get it back. The original was permanent and total, 100% disabled, with no future medical review needed. A year later, we get a letter that says, we're dropping you to 30%. So it went from there.
All right. So the entire organization is mismanaged. How many stories have been done on the screw-ups in the VA administration?
I don't know of anything quite like ours, but I do know that there's been enough news out there that people should be more aware than I feel they are. I'm hoping this is one channel to get the word out to realize how poorly our veterans are treated from all wars. It's ongoing. It never ends. And people talk about it, but until you live the reality, until you live with someone who has PTSD, until you live with someone who has a recurrence of prostate cancer at this point because of Agent Orange, until you see these people riding around in their carts because they've lost limbs,
How do you envision solving this?
As with anything else, I think the more things are brought up, the more things are conversed about, the more things are told, the more reality checks are done. They talk about 21 vets a day committing suicide, but how many people does that actually affect? How many people are aware of what an impact that has on the family? I think if we bring it to the forefront and allow people to realize with this story how badly people can be impacted, I think it will help work its way through the chains, maybe through the government. Maybe we've got a couple of senators or congressmen who would like to read the book and realize just how hurtful it all is to these men.
Have you reached out to your congressman?
Not as of yet. That's on our list. We have done some other things. We have actually done a book signing at one of the local bases and gotten excellent feedback. I'm in Jacksonville, Florida. There's Mayport, which is a ocean base. Then we have NAS Jacksonville, and in Kings Bay, Georgia is 45 minutes up the road. And we're in the process of setting those two up now and have done Mayport once.
That's great. So do you think government intervention can fix this?
All of it, no, but I think it can help. I think a lot of it needs to come from within. I think the VA needs to realize that they need to stand up too and maybe get more veterans in the places that need to be handled, more military men, more people who know We're people who sympathize.
Well, I think if you went on your book tour, you continue on it, and at each and every stop, get the number of the senator that those people have to call and give it out and say, when we leave, when we are done here today, we need you to call this number and we need you to stamp your feet and jump up and down until something's done.
Thank you. Excellent. I had not thought of that one.
You know what? The squeaky wheel gets the grease, and I hope at some point, PJ, you get some satisfaction. Patricia McKee Capuccio worked in the insurance industry for years, and boy, did she need a creative outlet. She wrote a book years ago that she forgot about, and now it's published. It's called The Siamese Christmas Story. What's the story, Patricia?
A Siamese cat who goes with the fourth wise man to Bethlehem in a basket. And she escapes from the basket, and it's her adventures in the desert where she comes upon an oasis, and she takes a little nap, and she realizes she has to follow the star to get to the baby Jesus. So she follows the star, and she realizes, I have to walk at night because it's too hot in the sun. Finds the baby Jesus, and at this point she has green eyes, but Siamese cats have blue eyes. So she licks baby Jesus's arm, and her eyes turn blue. And it's a little girl who's being discharged from the hospital, and her doctor, Dr. Jeffrey, tells her this story. Then her dad goes to pick her up at the hospital, and in the car there's a Siamese cat kitten in a box waiting for her. And they're driving away, and she says to her dad, do you know how Siamese cats got their blue eyes? And that's the story.
Why are you crying?
Get very emotional. I actually wrote the story 31 years ago. I was recovering from my, second open heart surgery. And I had a Siamese cat at the time, Samantha. And I just was feeling better, was bored, and decided to write this little story. And then about a year and a half ago, my husband was going through some papers, and he hands me this handwritten manuscript I had done. I was like, oh my God, I had totally forgotten about it. So I read it over and I thought, I'm going to see if I can get this published. And that's how I got to today. This was like a little fun thing that I did to distract myself from feeling like garbage, basically.
And coming up with, how Siamese cats got their eyes.
I have to make a little magical thing in here. And, Siamese cats have beautiful blue eyes. And I thought, let me make the cat's eyes green. And then when she gets to the manger, she licks the baby Jesus and the eyes turn blue.
This book is just in time for Christmas.
I know. I had a book event in April announcing the book to family and friends. And I had 2 representatives of Page there. And they were very supportive. They gave me complimentary bookmarks to send as a thank you to everyone who came to the book event. So I've been pushing it a bit myself.
That's great.
Yeah, and I'm working right now on getting it into the national chain Paper Source. They sell specialty cards and gift wrappings and books and things of that nature. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to get it into their stores nationwide, and they do have 125 stores.
Oh, that would be great.
So that would be a real feather in the cap, so to speak.
But, everybody's got those holiday sales. Churches have those bazaars, around Christmas time.
Right.
That.
Well, I want to do a book signing up at Paper Source in City Place in West Palm Beach the weekend of Thanksgiving.
There you go.
Because that's when Christmas shopping starts. And then there's also another chain, Charming Charlie's. They sell casual clothing and costume jewelry and things like that. And they've offered me to have a book signing there. They give me a table in their store every weekend in December. So I may take them up on that as well.
Oh, man, good for you.
I'm really having a lot of fun with it,
You've got a lot of opportunities there. A lot of times writers can't figure it out. They can't put it out there. And, you're the best one to sell that book, man. You know that book like nobody else.
Exactly.
Great promotion, Patricia. Think on that while we take a very short break, but we're coming right back. This is the Page Publishing Book Club.
Have you written a book and want to get it published? Then now's the time to call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099 and do it immediately. You see, they're looking for authors of all types of books. And unlike most publishers, Page Publishing will take the time to review most of the books submitted to them. And they'll even give you their feedback. And if they like what they read, Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, the Apple iTunes Store, and other outlets. They'll handle everything: copyright protection, printing, cover art, publicity, and editing. So if you've written a novel, a children's book, a cookbook, inspirational work, a book of poetry, or biography, and want to get it published, then you need to call Page Publishing and do it immediately. Call 800-204-6099 now for your free author submission kit. Your road to fame and fortune could very well start with this simple phone call. For your free author submission kit, call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099.
We're back on the Page Publishing Book Club. I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini. Dr. Norm Weisstuck grew up in the Bronx during the turbulent times of the 60s. He witnessed the injustices done to so many people who started nonprofits to provide badly needed community services, only to be turned away by government or drastically underfunded. His book, entitled A Kid from the Bronx, traces those injustices right up through today. And he lays out the case for private funding of special education and mental health services, two areas you know well through your experience as a psychologist, right? Welcome.
I had an office privately in Princeton for 18 years, but I also consulted for the Division of Youth and Family Services, worked in various school districts, and saw the struggle that people experience over many years in my career. And after 40 years in the field, I've concluded that because of political infighting, there is no possible way that the funds needed could be raised in any other fashion to do it properly.
And you're saying that it's possible to get these funds, and you use St. Jude's as an example. So does your
Correct.
book lay out a pathway for that? Do you?
Not specifically. Basically, I've been advocating a model which would include things like advocacy meetings where professionals and parents who've been affected by these things and try to reach out to businesses and say, look, this is what we need. And it might start small with smaller type programs like after-school programs or tutorial programs or any of the number of services that could be offered. Payment for mental health services for people that could not get those services otherwise. And it would depend on the level of push from people that are affected by this, pick up by people that are in a position to influence others, and it could be, entertainers, writers, people that have a visible presence that would allow people to see, yes, this is a good thing. It could be professional athletes. People have to be willing to pick up the ball, and again, the issue is always people are willing to pick up the ball for illness, the tragedy, and even to that degree, it can become limited, like what's happened more recently in Puerto Rico.
Right.
And, it's a matter of how far would people go to support this cause over others. Right. And I don't know the answer to that, which makes it very hard to lay out a course of action. The only thing that I can say is if you look at the history and you look at the struggles that people are experiencing, the way that it goes right now is always through social services, which is a government-funded entity, none of which has been funded to the degree necessary.
Right.
And that would also be true in terms of special education services, which is also funded through a government entity. And the government entities are not providing the money needed to make these things work properly. And I've been involved in the services directly to know how improperly they are functioning.
Okay,
and that's where the book came from. There is one group that has picked up the ball, the Fathers' Rights Movement, and they are seriously looking at this because I had worked with a father who was drastically affected by that through the courts, which is yet a whole other area. But the point being that they do see the connection to what it is that I'm doing, that government intervention only causes more heartache for people. A lot of these problems are mental health problems, but they were not addressed by mental health entities as much as they are addressed by government entities. And the only thing that the government knows how to do is to work out some kind of administrative outcome. And that's not going to solve anything. What's needed is assistance in dealing with the mental health issues that take place.
I hear you, Dr. Weisstuck. I mean, we have a lot of mental health issues in this country that no one wants to talk about, let alone do anything about. So I appreciate your efforts. Daniel Mahalik II started his book when he was a freshman in high school 16 years ago. It's entitled Eldest the Ancients, Book 1. What'd you come up with, Daniel?
Well, I've always had an interest in ancient history and mythology. And I was going to bed one night, and I literally just had a dream of the cover art, which the people at Page Publishing did a fantastic job taking my dream image and turning it into something tangible. And I literally had a voiceover in my mind that came out of a dream. The storyline is about the last member of an ancient clan from another planet that came to this world hundreds of thousands of years prior. He has inherited his powers, his knowledge, and his abilities through his bloodlines, and he actually has to fight an all-consuming evil in order to protect this world and all worlds from utter destruction. And over the course of the storyline, his powers and his background, his entire self-identity evolves until he becomes the eldest. I had been trying to get it published for a few years now, and all of the established publishing houses required a publishing agent to represent me. So I started looking for an agent, but all the agents required a publishing contract before they would consider representation. So I started looking for alternative means for publication, and I saw an advertisement on TV for Page Publishing and sent for their info packet, and they picked me up. They did a fantastic job. The publishing coordinator that I had was fantastic. She kept me in the loop. She alerted me whenever something was ready for me to review. The editor or editors, I'm not sure how many were actually involved. There were some odd changes that they made, but the editing process for my revisions on top of what they did went so smoothly that it ended up turning out fantastic.
How many books are involved here?
So far, I have 5 planned. I've got the second one started. I have 4 of the titles picked out. I have 5 books planned.
The only one that's finished is the first one?
Yes.
Okay, so the next 5 are just, they're all laid out in your head.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you going to do book signings or have a book signing party or?
I'm thinking I would like to do a book signing at my Barnes & Noble.
All right, Daniel, get on that. Finally, Patricia Lewis was seriously injured in a car accident, which turned out to be not only a miracle, but a life-changing experience. The title of her book, Knowing.
I was testifying about it. Everybody wanted to know about it. Everyone wanted to hear about it. And I prayed about it. I said, Lord, have mercy. I want to tell of your goodness. I want to tell of your grace and mercy. But it left me totally disabled. And I was unable to go to the different places that requested me to go to tell of my testimony. So I prayed after, Lord Jesus, please help me. I want to tell about it. How can I do it? He said, write a book. And I said, well, Lord, what do you want me to call it? He says, Knowing. I need everyone to know that because I brought you through with that miracle and I saved your life, I could do the same for them if they just trust me and get to know me. And I said, well, Lord, I don't know how to start that. Help me with that. I was watching TV and I changed the channel. And just as I changed the channel, there's a commercial that says, hi, are you trying to write a book? Well, call us at Page Publishing, and we will help you with that. And I did call Page Publishing, and that's how we got the book, Knowing.
That really is amazing.
Yes. And like I said, it's a blessing, because prior to my wreck, I nursed, trying to help any and everyone that needed help, assistance. And now I am totally disabled in a power wheelchair, and I need the help myself. That's why everyone wanted to know about the testimony, and it was such a horrific wreck that the doctor said that I should not be here today.
What happened?
So I was just driving down the street. I stopped at a red light, and a lady was in the turning lane. I was going north. She was coming south. Just as my light turned green and I accelerated, the lady accelerated as well, trying to beat my vehicle. And she T-boned me, and back was broken, permanent nerve damage, and a lot of other injuries. And because of that, I am now totally disabled in a power wheelchair.
You can't walk?
I can walk slightly, very, very, very slowly, but just to walk or do anything that I did prior to the wreck, no.
What do you do with yourself all day?
Well, first of all, when I wake up, I pray and thank the Lord for blessing me to see another day. Read the Bible and whatever else I can do during the day. I ask the Lord, I know you saved me from that wreck because the doctor said I should have been dead. So you saved me for a reason. So just bless me to be able to do whatever it is you have for me to do. And I'm still thankful and grateful because I'm still blessed because I'm still here.
If you can do it, anybody can do it.
That brings us back to the book. Knowing the Lord just told me, he says, everybody was saying, well, girl, what happened? Can you come and speak at our church? Can you go and speak to our group? Can you do this? And I said, well, I want to tell you about it, but the Lord is going to help me to be able to tell the world about it, because I've always said I wanted the world to know that I am saved to know the Lord Jesus, and he is my Father and I am his child. And through this situation, it allows me to do it by writing the book, Knowing.
Well, best of luck to you, Patricia. You really, really are an inspiration. Thank you. And that's a wrap for this edition of the Page Publishing Book Club. I know, didn't it go fast? Thank you, Rob Barrett's my engineer, and thank you for listening. Just want to remind you that all of our shows are available anytime you want for download at 710WOR.iHeart.com. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Enjoy the rest of your week. See you next time.